words, right? Enneagram meaning 9 and gramos meaning anything that is drawn, and that's where the word comes from. Enneagram came to the world really in a form that we can use to understand people in 1915. Before that, there's a lot of history you can read about, and it's all available, but it was part of a lot of religious teachings as well, right? So there were a lot of Sufi saints, Christianity have used the Enneagram, not known as the Enneagram, but they have used the symbol to interpret many teachings also. And this gentleman called Gurdjieff, who was a philosopher, actually said, can we use this to understand human personalities? And that's how he built the whole system. The Enneagram is often called a psycho-spiritual system. And the reason is that it's not just about the psychology of people, but it also allows you to get to a stage of so much of awareness and mindfulness that it really does help you in your spiritual journey as well, right? So not connected to any religion, but more from a spirituality point of view. So the Enneagram talks about how we have certain patterns of behavior, which we have built over time, right? And because we behaved a certain way for 15, 16, 20 years of our life, that becomes who we are, right? And it explores those patterns and talks about how that plays out when we behave with people. Okay, so that's just a very brief introduction. How do we use the Enneagram? Of course, Orzea, right? Orzea, is that how you pronounce your name?
Ozge.
Ozge, okay, Ozge. You spoke about how it helped you, how you like listening to it because it helped you understand, people, right? And so one of the biggest uses of the Enneagram is to be able to, of course, understand not just personalities, but understand the motivations of those personalities. So a lot of, we have different tools available today, like the MBTI or, DISC, and there's so many of them, which talk a lot about the behavior, and that is very important. The Enneagram goes a little below the surface, and it says that if this is how you behave, I'm going to explain more than how you behave, I'm going to explain why you behave, right? So to be able to understand the motivations behind the behavior is what the Enneagram helps us understand, right? If anyone is not able to understand, please feel free to stop me. Yeah. So the Enneagram can be used so obviously for self-awareness, right? Also to understand other people. It has been used a lot in organizations to help in hiring, right? If you are able to profile people, then we know that these are the problems this person is going to have, especially with leadership, right? So this person is going to operate like this. So in an organization where it's very highly results and very action oriented, we want people to kind of not get lost in thinking, but you want them to really get to action. We know that there are a few types that may not be able to perform as well, right? Of course, all types are beautiful, all types are great, no type is better than the other, but all types do have certain strengths, right? And some challenges as well. So I'm going to start off by sharing with you very broadly. The Enneagram talks about 9 types. Okay, these 9 types are grouped into 3 centers of intelligence. Okay, just to give a small introduction for people who have not heard about the Enneagram before. Very often when we have conversations, we say, don't just think from your heart, think from your head, right? Or we tell people, you're always in your head, you should think from your heart. Right? So we very often talk about the head and the heart, but what we often miss is actually the gut, right? Or the body center, or the gut, which is our stomach area. Because honestly, a lot of people make decisions from a place of instinct, right? They just want to do something. You ask them why, they may not know. They just say, this feels right, right? And that's their instinct. So Enneagram says that if you can actually balance your head, your heart, and your gut, right, then you are probably making more balanced decisions in life, right? So the 9 types of the Enneagram are therefore split, right? 3 types in each center of intelligence. So you can see types 8, 9, and 1 are called the body center or the gut center or the instinctive center. Okay. Types 2, 3, and 4 are in the heart center, which means that a lot of their decision making, a lot of the way they consume the world, right? So if they have an experience, if there's a conversation between 2 people, and I'm telling you that, yesterday I fell down because I lost balance on my bike, just for an example, right? Somebody who's listening to me from the heart center will say, oh my God, you must have gotten really scared when you fell down. Okay, because they are going to connect to the feeling that I'm expressing. Somebody in the head center, which is 5, 6, and 7, is going to say, what was wrong with the bike? Right? They're going to focus on the thinking part of that accident, but 2, 3, and 4 are going to actually focus on the feeling part of that conversation, right? So it's almost, how do I receive experiences from the world? Do I receive it in an instinctive way? Is it right, wrong? I'm very quick, right? Do I receive the feelings and the emotions, or do I think about whatever I listen to or whatever I experience? Right? Is that making sense so far? Okay. Each of these centers are also very easy to run towards one negative emotion. Okay. So if you look at the body center, 8, 9, and 1, they're what I call a go-to emotion. What emotion do I go to most easily? The 8, 9, and 1 goes towards anger very easily. Okay. 2, 3, and 4 actually feel shame. And 5, 6, and 7 actually feel fear. And I will tell you more as we go along. But it doesn't mean that 8s, 9s, and 1s are always angry. No, right? It just means that if something goes wrong, they are likely to feel anger first, right? So for example, when I hear, and I'm a type 8, so you can make some observations, right? So when I hear something sad has happened, like if there's an attack on a building or a bank, or there's a bomb that goes off, my first reaction is actually anger. It's not sadness, right? My first reaction is, why should they do this? Why are people violent, right? So I come from anger. Whatever action I take comes from there. It doesn't mean that I'm always shouting. It just means that my first feeling is anger. And similarly for the others, right? Okay, so what I would request you to do is, if you can start thinking about people in your near circle. Those of you who are students, think about your close friends, think about your family. People who are in families can think about the personalities that you are around, and see if you can start seeing who they might be, right? Because then you are going to think about each of the types. And I'll ask you to share a couple of examples, right? Can I pause for a minute and see if there are any questions? I think you'll need to unmute. Do I need to unmute you? No. Any questions? No?
No, there are not.
Okay. So let's start with type 1. Okay, I'm just going to go through the names. So you have the type 1 who are called the reformers, right? As you can see, they kind of stand for doing the right thing. Okay. Type 2s are called the helpers, right? As you can see from the small pictures that I've put, they really want to help people, right? It doesn't mean that the other types are not helpful. Okay, it just means that a type 2 will do it so much more easily than the other types. That's all, right? Type 3s are also called the achievers. They tend to be very goal-oriented. They work towards something. Type 4s are the individualists. They tend to be a lot of artists. For example, you will see our type 4s. They're very, very creative. They're always creating something, never satisfied with any creation, always believe that something more creative is possible, right? So a lot of dancers, singers, musicians, painters, you will see them as type 4s. Type 5s, the investigators. Type 6 are also called the loyalists. Type 7 are called the enthusiast. Type 8, the challenger. And type 9, the peacemaker. So I'm going to go through each of them really fast. And here is where you can start thinking about your near and dear ones and your friends or family. And if you know that someone fits here. Okay. So very quickly, let's see. Type 1, also called the reformer. The reformer's basic desire is to be good. Okay. And remember that this is about motivations, right? Their main motivator is, I want to be good and I want to be balanced and I want to stand for what is right and wrong. So reformers very often are very clear. They're very black and white. They're very clear about what is right and what is wrong, right? So they tend to be also very judgmental because they believe that what they are doing is right, right? They also look at what other people are doing as right and wrong. So they tend to be a little rigid. They're not they're not too flexible, right? Type 1s tend to be a little rigid. Their sense of self, which is that what they think of themselves is that they are very reasonable, right? Nobody is able to understand. Why do they think that I'm rigid? I'm actually quite reasonable. That's what they're thinking about themselves, right? In leadership, they can set really clear goals and they can inspire people because they work to perfection. They tend to be perfectionists. They work to perfection. They do not like errors. They do not like, sloppy work. If you send a document to a type 1, he or she will take a long time to review that document, for example, right? Because they're going to make sure there's absolutely no error in that. So that's one of the behaviors that you can see, right, of a type 1. So the type 1 comes from the body or the gut center, the one right on top that we saw. And what's interesting about the type 1 is that they operate from anger, but they won't show it. Okay. And they don't show it because they believe that feeling angry is wrong. So it's interesting that you will see a type 1 get angry. It will show on their face, but they will never say it. So they will say that I'm irritated or I'm frustrated, but they will never say I'm angry because for them, it's not right to be angry, right? Because they're all about right and wrong. Okay. So some of you are smiling. I think you know some type 1s or you yourselves are type 1s. Okay. Okay.
I think my boss type 1.
Oh, is it? Okay.
I don't want to send any document to him.
Yeah, they can take a long time. My husband is a type 1. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, so I think you're lucky to have the boss. So the type 2 are also called the helpers. It's that a type 2's need is that people should love them. Okay, they really want people to love them. It's important for them, right? And therefore they help, hoping that that's what's happening, right? Because if I help you, you are going to like me, right? You can't not like me if I help you, right? So type 2s come a lot from a space of helping people. And what they think about themselves is that I'm loving and caring. But you know what? They do it too much. And after some time, they feel that people just keep taking from me. Why aren't they giving me anything? So they get kind of put off, they feel cheated by people. And they're the ones who will complain when they're in their 50s or 60s saying, I just kept giving all my life and nobody really gave me back, right? But they are such good people oriented, right? Because they are constantly looking for personal connections. They are always there to help somebody in need. And that makes them great leaders because they will always take a team along. Right? They don't need personal credit. They will take the team along. And they don't like working alone. They are quite social as a type. Right? And they come from a feeling center. So type 2s come from the feeling center. They're constantly very conscious of what people are feeling, what they are feeling. So you give them too much of logic, they struggle. Right? They can struggle with logic because they are only listening to the feeling. right? But they make, obviously, you know, some professions need that as a strength, and they can do very well there. Yeah. Type 3, your achiever. So achievers have a slightly more loud personality. You know, like if a type 3 walks into a room, everybody will know. You know, they carry themselves really well. They dress really well. You know, they take the effort to look good because they want to be noticed, right? So their achievement and the way they carry themselves is about being noticed. It's important to them, right? So what happens is they are also very driven towards achievement of results. And that works really well, right? So they will really go after something with a lot of focus, right? And they're quite ambitious. And so they can inspire a team in an organization or a family or any place, right? Or school. They can inspire the others because they are so focused and people can feel inspired. So they also come from the feeling center, and that their feeling is one of passion, right? They have a lot of feeling and very intense. So if they fail, you will really see them get extremely upset, right? The feelings are out there, right? They find it difficult to fail. They can't take that too well. Yeah. A type 4, like I said, yeah.
And it's sometimes really challenging. You can feel, but you cannot express, you cannot put in the word. And sometimes it can be quite challenging with
Yes,
feeling.
yes.
And you cannot explain people who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, that is because for a type 3, the difficulty of feeling is because they also have to keep up an image, right? And showing the feeling may not be the sign of strength, right?
Correct.
And so they hold it back, right? And then it just comes out in a way it was not supposed to come out, right? So because they are so conscious about their image, then the feeling doesn't get expressed the way it should be. So that's why type 3 struggle with that. Right? So type 4s, which are also called individualist, like I said, they tend to be very creative. You don't see too many type 4s normally in a corporate environment because the corporate environment is very structured, and type 4s don't like structure. They really like to kind of free flow. They like to create as they go along, right? So that's why a lot of musicians, painters, you will find them in the corporate world, maybe in the advertising industry, right? Or in the design industry, where there is a scope for creativity. You will see them. So they don't like being restricted. Their understanding of what is beautiful will rarely be everybody else's. You know, what they say is beautiful, many people don't see as beautiful. They have their own sense of what is beauty and what is perfect, right? So they also are very sensitive people. You will see type 4s can kind of fluctuate, like, so they can be really emotional about something. If they're happy, they'll be jumping around. And if they're sad, they will cry out there, right? They don't care much about what it looks like. Yeah, so that's your 4. Type 5s are, you will see a lot of people who are professors, you know, in colleges, institutions, are type 5s because they love information. Okay, a lot of the type 5s strength comes from knowing. Okay, and they will go extremely deep into any topic. So if you talk to a type 5, you will be able to make out that they're constantly picking up the words. They're not picking up the feelings. You know, you can see it in their eyes. As they're listening to you, they're thinking about what you're saying, but they're not thinking about what you're feeling. So they made great research professors, right? Because they will really go after information, and they will not speak until they know everything they think they need to know about a topic. Yeah. So they all have a fear as well. A type 5's fear is that I should not have no value. Wherever I go, I should be able to bring value. And that's why they read a lot. They will investigate a lot before they get to a point to contribute. Yeah, so yeah, that's your 5. I'm going to go to the 6. The 6 is also called the loyalist. And sixes are also very good at problem solving. So, you know, sometimes you're planning a holiday and the whole family is sitting together, and you will have one person who will say, have you taken for the little kids something? Have you taken for the old people something? Do we have enough medicines with us? Have we planned if there is rain? Right? There's always one person who's saying, have you thought of all these possibilities? That's your type 6. Because, you know, they want people to depend on them. And therefore, they prepare a lot. And they look at all the things that can go bad, or all the things that can go wrong, right? So sometimes type 6s can be misunderstood for being negative or pessimistic, because they're always seeing what can go wrong, right? But they're doing that so that everybody is safe, right? They're not doing that to be negative. Yeah. So type 6s are also in the head, just like a type 5. They think a lot. I don't know if you've met people who are constantly overthinking. You know, you give them something, a point of view, and they're thinking and thinking, and they're not getting down to a solution because they're thinking, right? They come from this center, right? The head center, where there's a lot of thinking, right? And 6s also don't like taking risk. That's another reason why they think of all that can go wrong. But they're really good for a team, right? Because if someone is overlooking something, they probably will think of it, right? That's your 6. The 7 are called the enthusiasts. The 7s are full of energy, love having a good time, love having fun, okay? And 7s are the life of a party. So what is great about having a 7 is they are so good at motivating the other people as well, because they're always cheerful. So it's nice having a 7 around, but the problem can be that the 7s like new things. So, you know, they make extremely good beginners. So if there's a new project, or there's a new subject, or there's a new presentation, you want your 7 with you, because your 7 is going to give you ideas, going to give you the excitement, right? But a little into the project, the 7 starts losing interest, because they're looking for, oh, that looks better than what I'm doing. Let me go to that, right? Let me do the next exciting thing. So 7s tend to lose steam, what we say, right? We lose steam after some time and then start slowing down. So that can be a challenge for the 7s, right? But they're really very energetic, generally very happy people, and, you know, nice to be around. 8s are also called the challengers. So the challenger really values autonomy, right? Can I make my own decisions? Can I control what's happening with me? Can I control with what's happening with people around me? That's very important for an 8. And they really like taking risks. Everything is okay. They will figure it out, right? So 8s don't prepare too much. Like I spoke about the 1 or the 6, right? Where they do a lot of preparation. 8s don't prepare because they're like, you know, we'll figure it out. They like that challenge, right? So people, if 8s are working with 1s, can you imagine how scared the 1s will be, right? Because the 8s are like, we don't need to preparation, we'll figure it out. But the 1s are saying, no, it has to be a perfect presentation. You know, I have to prepare. So there could be clashes like that between any two types, yeah? And the 8s are also one of the most instinctive of the types. They're in that top triad, in that 8-9-1. 8s make a lot of gut decisions. They will just, very big decisions. They will just go in a second, they will make a decision, right? And they will stick to it. They will not doubt their decision, right? Because they really trust their instinct. 9s are also called your peacemakers, right? Now, peacemakers are very fond of, like the word says, to keep harmony and peace. They don't want conflict. So of all the 9 types, it's your peacemaker who avoids conflict the most. So if there is a way of pushing some discussion, postponing some discussion for later, that's your type 9, right? Because for 9, it's important to keep the peace, right? They don't like tension. They don't like conflict. They look very calm. You know, if you meet type 9s, you see that they look very calm. You won't see any stress on their face. There's a lot happening inside, but they carry a very calm expression all the time. Right? And what is interesting is about 9 is they can also be quite stubborn. Right? They're very sure about what they are doing, but they will not say it in a rude way, but they will just get their way very nicely, and they will do what they want in the end, but they do it very nicely, right? Without conflict. Sorry. So that's your 9. Okay. So there's one more aspect of the Enneagram, but I want to stop, Kyra, if there are any questions at this point before I get to the next piece, because I've just breezed through the 9 types.
Yes, I'm looking, but I do not see any any questions. I just see some comments regarding the types, like this is my mom. Oh, Dilek just raised her hand.
No. Sima, Amos is a 3, but I find that myself is the more close to other types as well. How, if we have the mix of 2 types or 3 types, how we can describe to ourselves?
So do you see those arrows? Can you see those lines right across?
Yes.
Yeah. So there are connections. So if you are saying that you are connecting to a 3, you have a connection to a 9 and a 6. Okay. So you will have some characters of the 9. You will have something of the 6. Okay. And actually a 3, when you are under stress, okay, you are actually going to behave a lot like a 6. Okay, which is that when things are not going too well, if you're feeling stress, you're going to start panicking and you're going to see, have I done this? Have I done this? Have I done this? Have I done this? You're going to start overthinking your achievements. Okay.
Correct.
But if you're doing well, and you're in a good place, you're going to be like a 9, which is very calm, in control, no panic. Right? And you're going to be very focused. Yeah.
This is definitely. And one question, personal question, actually. For example,
Sure.
I find that myself, if I am not enough confident during meeting, if I am not now all the topics, aware of all the topics, especially I'm in a meeting with the senior people, and if I have a nice idea, I have really feel shy, feeling if I'm not share my thought, and they will, if they're gonna think about me, I'm stupid. And when I'm junior, they announce me, and I'm really struggling with this feeling. I'm trying all the time to overcome this my fear, but still I didn't success. I'm still failing.
Yeah. And you remember I said the feeling in the 2, 3, 4 is shame.
Yeah.
Right? So what happens is the 2, 3, 4 image is also very important, especially for the 3, right? So if you ask yourself the next time you hold back, that are you concerned what the others will think about you because of your image, right? It's important that you have a certain image with other people, right? And the fear that, will I still have that image if I make this question? What will people think of me? Right? It's coming from your image. So I would say, remind yourself that you already are in a good position, right? You already have achieved so much. Your image is not going to go anywhere.
I see.
Right?
I see.
And if
Which
you think of that, yes. And if you think of that, then you will feel more confident to express, because type 3s think about sharing when they think, oh God, how will I look?
Correct.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. Thank you very much for the advice. It's a very added value for me. Thank you.
Thank you.
May I ask a question and make a comment?
Yes, please.
When I listen, I feel like I am all of them sometimes. All of them, really. I think it is very interactive. It depends on very much the environment, the moment that you are in. sometimes you are 1, sometimes you are 7. Really, it is very depend on the other people as well, or the environment in general. Am I right?
Yes, absolutely. It's impossible that there are only 9 types of people in the world. Right? It's impossible.
Yeah.
We've all had different parents. We've all had different friends. We're all in different environments. So that obviously has an impact on who we are and the way we behave. Right? But what's interesting in the Enneagram is that it focuses on why do we behave that way. Okay. So if I can give you an example, if you look at this diagram, like I shared about the type 3, every type has an influence of at least 4 other numbers, right? So for example, you said 1 and 7, right? Now, if you look at 1 and 7, there's a connection. Can you see that there's a line going, right? So let's take 7. 7 has an influence of 5 because you see a connecting line. 7 has an influence of 1 because there's a connecting line, and there is a meaning behind each connection, but we won't have the time to go into that. 7 also has neighbors. You see 7's neighbors are 8 and 6, right? So the 8 and 6 are actually the friendly neighbors of the 7. So a 7 can behave like an 8 sometimes, but only the good qualities. 7 can also borrow from the 6. 6 is good qualities. So straight away, every type has 4 other types influencing them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
because,
you're
for
absolutely
example,
right in your
I'm
observation.
definitely a peacemaker at home.
Okay.
But totally something else at the same time in the work environment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's possible. And it will be interesting for you to think if one of the environments is causing you more stress. Because stress can also cause a certain shift. And if one environment is more stressful, then you feel that only behaving this way is going to work. So you can think about that.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your sharing.
I have also a question.
Yes.
So actually we divided that 9 times into the 3 main triggers, right? Heart, mind, and also body. So we also mentioned about the connections within and neighbors, which affect our behaviors. Is there a way to explain that? Okay, if you're in a stressful environment, you know, if you're the one who is heart-centered, your connection to the mind-centered will be triggered. That kind of a flow is defined within that, you know, types, or that lines, which let's give an example, 5 to 8, does not directly have any direction. So do we have a chance to say that, you know, 5 stands on the mind side, right? Am I wrong? And 8 stand on the body side. So is there a way to explain that within that blah blah situation, you're going to find yourself as an investigator, as a challenger, you know, within that circumstances or environment?
Yeah. So there is a definition for how each type behaves under stress. So if you take 5, a 5 under stress behaves like a 7. Okay, and a 5, when a 5 is doing well for himself or herself, behaves like an 8. Okay, so you see the 2 arrows of the 5, one goes to the 2 lines, one goes to the 7 and one goes to the 8. These are defined, right? So for example, let me take my example. I'm an 8. Okay, so when an 8 feels stress, okay, I'm going to behave like a 5. You see the line between 8 and 5?
Yeah.
Okay, and a 5, what does the 5 do? The 5 starts wanting a lot of information. They can get very lost in information and stop being productive about it. Right? So what happens when I'm under stress, if I have too many things to do in a day, I go crazy, right? So I start asking for information. I ask my daughter for information. I ask my husband for information. I call my clients and say, where is this? I'm looking for a lot of information. I behave like a stressed 5, right? Too much information for no use. Right? But when an 8 is doing well, and I say doing well, I mean peace of mind, calm, no stress, I actually behave a lot like a 2, right? So as a coach, right, who's a 2? A 2 is a helper.
Mm.
So when I'm at my best, I behave a lot like a 2.
I get it. Okay, but
Okay,
not
so
related. Okay.
Yeah. So every type has that definition on how does you work under stress and how do you work when you're doing, when you're in a growth phase.
Okay, but not directly classified according to the body, mind, or what we say, heart side. Okay, this is mostly related with the conditions and your attitudes across that conditions against.
Yes.
Okay.
And your attitudes are influenced by the heart, mind, or the other, because they're anyway part of that group of 3.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Hi, thank you for the workshop. I was late, sorry for that. But
No
I have a
problem.
question. I take a test yesterday for today's workshop.
Oh,
So
okay.
my personality was 5 and wing was 6. I was curious because they are both mental. Is this a weak point, or how can we relate with the red lines in this situation?
Okay, the red lines are just a color, Yelda. There's no other meaning to the redness.
I mean, the connections you were just talking about.
Yeah,
When you
yeah.
are 8 and when you are stressful you are 5. Then I am 5. Then I'm stressed. When I'm stressful I'm 8. Is that right?
When you're stressful, you're actually 7.
7. Okay.
Yeah. So you know what a 7 does is they like variety. So when a 5 is feeling stress, actually 5's strength is to go deep into one topic, right? And become experts in that one topic. But when the 5 is under stress, like if you give 5s too much to do, they start behaving like a 7, which is like, too many things, jumping
Just
from one thing to the other, right? Is that you?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
I just
So when
do it. I don't
Yeah.
think it anymore when it's too much.
Exactly. So a 5s get very stressed when there's too much to do, and then they behave like a 7. They keep jumping tasks. They don't finish tasks, and they
Yeah.
just have like too many mounds of paper in their room. Nothing has gotten done, right? Too many files open. Nothing is closed. Okay.
Yes.
But when a 5 is doing well, when a 5 is, let's say, like being able to be productive, you can behave a lot like an 8, which is, push yourself, take up a challenge, push people who work with you, very focused, very kind of very protective, and also very empowering. So that's how a 5 tends to work.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, I'm very, very quickly going to explain something that you might wonder later. This is a little more deeper in the Enneagram, but I thought it will help to explain this in just 2 minutes. So you can meet 2 people, let's say, who are, let's say, 2s, okay? Both of them, let's say both of them are helpers, right? But you can't believe that they both are the same because they both seem very different. Right? So where does this difference come? The difference comes in their levels of development. Okay. So for example, a type 2, which is in the healthy range, right, will work very differently from a type 2 who is in the unhealthy range. Right? Because a type 2 in an unhealthy range will feel very bad that nobody's appreciating their effort, for example, right? To a point of getting depressed, the point of going out of their way to seek for attention because they want to be liked so badly. They won't do it in a nice way, right? Because they've become insecure about it, right? But a type 2 in a healthy range will continue to help people and be very confident in themselves. Okay, so if you see 2 types, 2 people, let's say 3 of you take the tool today, there's an online free tool available, you take it, and like that person and me are both the same, it makes no sense, right? So for example, I can tell you, just to be a little funny, but Donald Trump and I are both type 8, right? So I've had, when we discuss it in our groups here, we're like, really? He doesn't behave like that, or you don't behave like that. But that's because of this. That's your levels of development. Okay, so it depends where you are, and you will see differences in that. Just wanted to leave this with you because you will see people who will say, I'm a type 7, she's a type 7 too, but they're like, no, but you're too different. You don't seem like the same. So this could be one explanation for it. Yeah, so if you look at the distribution of population of people all over the world, most people are in the average. You know, it's like a beetroot. You know a beetroot, right? Okay, so if you look at the beetroot, you have a narrow thing up and you have a narrow below, but the middle is wide. Most of the population is in that average, in the average range. Okay, you have much less people in the unhealthy range, and you have much less people in the healthy range. Most of your people around you are going to be in the middle of that beetroot, which is the largest distribution is in the middle. Okay, so it takes a lot of self-work, a lot of introspection to get to the healthy range. And people who normally suffer from disorders, anxiety, depression, any kind of psychosis, all of them tend to be in the unhealthy range. Yeah. Just, okay, so I think I have not exceeded time. So I'm open for questions.
I have a question. I think
Yes.
I couldn't understand something. At the last page, you mentioned about levels of development, and let's say I am the 5, and the 5 connecting to 7 and 8, and all of them in different part of this chart.
No, those numbers are not the types. Those numbers are not the types. Those numbers are actually levels. Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood. Okay.
No, I did not explain that properly. There are actually 9 levels of development. So that's 1, 2, 3 is in your healthy level, 4, 5, 6 is in the average. So each of those levels are defined.
Okay.
So there's 81 type of people, we can say.
Yeah, actually there's another angle which I'm not getting into, but there are actually 256 types, but yeah.
So I have to just cut a little bit to make an announcement. We will be sending our feedback forms, and if you have any further questions, you can send them to us so we can direct them to dear Seema, and we will be sending the feedback form, and I will be stopping recording. Thank you so much.
Okay.